Genghis Khan at the table there. So we are all, everyone else is to the right of Genghis Khan. Playing the piano is Bach, Johann Sebastian. Who do you have there? You've got Reagan dancing with Claire Booth Luce. You have Goldwater and, yes, the subject of my book, Toasting Each Other.
Who's that?
That's Barry Goldwater.
And then you go down here in the corner. You have any comment on this, Mr. Hitchens?
Not yet.
Not yet. And who do we have? Margaret Thatcher?
You have Margaret
Sam?
Thatcher with Uncle Sam. You have the Statue of Liberty lighting Bill Buckley's cigar, and his sister Priscilla Buckley next to him. Socrates there is mixing the cocktail shaker. That
right
I think we aired. It should have been Aristotle. Should have been Aristotle.
Well, The Nation, which was, of course, founded in 1865, naturally congratulates all magazines that last for 40 years. And I'm very pleased to see that the people who the National Review most admired when it started, who were Joe McCarthy and Francisco Franco, have neither of them made
They didn't show up. They didn't show up. They of course were given invitations and seats at the head table, but they were unable to make it.
But that's progress of a kind, anyway.
So we had to give their space to Bach.
Now we ask Mr. Hitchens to describe what this cover is all about.
That's the cover of Vanity Fair. That, I think, speaks for itself. That's all about Uma Thurman. Good piece, too. Inside, piece by me about the amazing fact that on New Year's Eve this year, at the stroke of midnight, the baby boomers will turn 50. And I think one of them will carry on turning 50 every, we worked it out, every 1.7 seconds. For the rest of next year. It'll be a melancholy year for the boomers, and I've written a piece saying what a disappointment the baby boom generation has been to itself and to others.
And Mr. Brookhiser, you write in the National Review about the baby boomer group, too.
Yes.
It's right here. It's called Passing Phase.
Well, one of those baby boomers is going to be President Clinton.
Yes.
This year.
50. Turning 50.
Yeah, we had a whole series of articles in there about the detour of history from 1914 to 1991. We thought that the 20th century had not lasted 100 years. It was a rather short century. It began with World War I, and it ended with the collapse of communism. And this wasn't an original insight with us. Eric Hobsbawm and John Lukacs have also thought of it. So we had various speculations on what this means to come out of that. And what I wrote about is, yes, we may be coming out of it, but what about those of us who were born in the midst of it? And how do we recover from the limitations on our education that were placed upon us by virtue of having been born when we were?
That photo you saw, or those series of photos, was from Vanity Fair. In your column,
we rarely put Uma Thurman on our cover.
In your column,
we leave these serious matters to be covered by Vanity Fair.
You bring up, you say this, one of the most poignant publishing phenomena of the last several years was the 70-month presence on the bestseller list of William Bennett's The Book of Virtues. Who was buying that 3-pound doorstop? Not kids. Clearly its purchasers were adults, many of them baby boomers, who bought it to read to their kids. You weren't, yet weren't they also reading it for themselves? And he now has the Moral Compass, another sequel, and a Moral Compass for kids. And bring that subject up for both of you. What's the fascination, do you think, with the Book of Virtues?
I just had to review the Book of Virtues for the Times Literary Supplement. I had no idea till I was paid to read it how bad it is.
Why is it bad?
How shallow and boring and how poorly selected and how pompous. For example, there's just, in a book of virtues for American children, there's, I think, one page from the whole of Mark Twain, and it's the boring bit where Tom Sawyer whitewashes the fence. And yet there's about 8 pages from one of the Watergate burglars about how he found God, or one of the Watergate burglars who did find God. It's absolute pabulum, I think. I don't believe anyone has really read it unless they've, like me, been paid to do so. I'm sure it's been bought with the best of intentions, but it's a huge disappointment.
Mr. Brookhiser?
Well, the thing is, it's filling a gap. I mean, the reason it did so well is because there's very little else out there like it. Once upon a time, there were McGuffey's readers, you know, which everybody bought, everybody read. In fact, the Conservative Book Club has told me that their biggest selling book has been McGuffey's Readers. They just took these 100-year-old collections of moral tales and reissued them. And the reason these things are so popular is that the rest of the culture is not providing it. we're all doing Uma Thurman. I like that. I can't let that go. I can't let go of Uma Thurman.
No, well, there you are. See, he's...
Who could?
This is why Vanity Fair is such a great magazine. You've shown the cover once.
I know, but who
and
is
he can't
Uma
stop. Who is Uma Thurman? I'm going to read this and find out now.
Do you follow?
Let me say another word just about my piece. I don't take quite the same line on the baby boomers as does Richard, though I think the idea of the short 20th century is a very interesting one, and I've also attempted to contemplate it. But what I've asked is, what are we going to say? I mean, I'm a 49er myself, that's when I was born, so it's not long for me. What are we going to say was our great achievement? Will it really be true that President Clinton is our typical president? I certainly hope not. I've described him as sort of partly a callow youth and partly a bit of a chin-pulling old bore already some of the time. What has been our great moral stand? What has been our great composer or author?